Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, it's December 4th. Today is day 425. I'm still in New York City. Here's an update from the last 24 hours. Use this information to pray. Use this as an update about what's happening in the Middle East. Use this to motivate us that God might break our hearts for the things that break the heart of God. That in this Christmas season, I don't know how many of you have kids and you've watched one of the numerous versions of The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, whose heart was too small, and then it grew 3 sizes. Ask that God would grow our hearts for what's happening in the Middle East, that God would break our hearts, but increase our capacity to be able to love. In terms of the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire, it continues to hold, but just barely. Israel yesterday threatened to return to war with Lebanon if the truce collapses. The Defense Minister Katz suggests that Israel will no longer separate the state of Lebanon from Hezbollah if the fighting resumes. This is very dangerous. The Christian community there is amongst the most vulnerable. One of the things that I talked to Foreign Minister Safadi about several months ago in Jordan is he said, if the Lebanese army gets involved in a war with Israel, the Christian community will be one of the first to be decimated. They'll leave, and they will be amongst the most vulnerable. So Israel, Netanyahu saying that he will go to war against Lebanon, not just Hezbollah, is very, very dangerous. But as of now, the ceasefire is holding between Hezbollah and Israel. An Israeli strike killed at least one person in Lebanon yesterday, further rattling the tenuous ceasefire. The IDF said that they killed a senior member of Hezbollah in a Syrian airstrike yesterday that was that happened in Syria. Israeli attacks on Lebanon since October of last year have killed more than 4,000 people, 4,047 people. And they've wounded 16,638. Today, the Biden administration announced additional sanctions against 35 additional entities that are involved in trading oil, Iranian oil. The U.S. State Department said that it's because the Iranian regime is using oil revenues to fund its nuclear program, missile, and UAV development. They said that Iran is also supporting terrorist proxies, referring specifically to Hezbollah, but other Iranian-backed groups throughout the Middle East. Moving on to Israel and Hamas, that war, Fatah, the political party of the Palestinian Authority, President Abbas, and Hamas, Fatah and Hamas, that are closing in on an agreement in Cairo. This agreement is about who would administer Gaza after the war. The deal is hinging on the idea that there would be a committee that would be politically independent technocrats. These technocrats would not be political actors. This would end Hamas's rule in Gaza. So those negotiations are happening right now in Egypt. A Hamas official yesterday blamed Israel for the lack of a ceasefire and hostage release agreement after President-elect Trump warned of hell to pay if the group does not release the remaining hostages before he becomes inaugurated. An Israeli delegation is set to arrive in Cairo tomorrow, that's Thursday, to discuss a possible ceasefire deal in Gaza. According to reports, Egyptian officials have drafted a new ceasefire proposal. The basis of that is similar to what we see in Lebanon, a 60-day temporary ceasefire. Israeli tanks have advanced further into South Gaza a day after issuing more evacuation orders. Palestinian medics have said Israeli airstrikes killed at least 20 people across the Gaza Strip. And it was reported yesterday that the 6 hostages that were killed in August, that happened while the army was attacking in the area. And that was without knowledge. The army didn't know that the hostages were nearby. The bodies of those 6 hostages were later recovered from a tunnel in Khan Yunis. So there was more information about that specific August incident released in Israeli media today. Hamas said it had information that Israel intended to carry out a hostage rescue operation, and they threatened to neutralize captives, in other words, kill them, if an operation were to take place. So the threat is if there's a rescue operation attempt, the hostages would be killed. In the past day, according to reports, at least 30 people throughout the Gaza enclave were killed, at least 84 wounded. The death toll in Gaza is at least 44,532 people. A State Department spokesperson has urged Israel to investigate allegations of its airstrikes in Gaza killing aid workers. And an update on Syria, the Syrian insurgents who've taken over Aleppo. It says they're now advancing even further on the city of Hama, and they're threatening to siphon government forces from a critical Aleppo-Damascus route, according to an independent War Monitor assessment. Health services in Idlib, you'll recall that these militants have been in control of Idlib for a while now. They're no longer functioning following a series of airstrikes on key hospitals. Doctors are saying it's coming as the regime has intensified strikes on the cities over the past week. And Russia and the US are clashing over the sudden escalation related to Syria. This happened at a UN Security Council meeting yesterday. Each side has accused the other of supporting terrorism. An Israeli court yesterday ordered Prime Minister Netanyahu to testify in his long-running corruption trial. And the U.S. envoy for combating anti-Semitism is set to visit the Middle East and discuss efforts to promote religious tolerance. This is the U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. It's Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt. She departed this week to travel to Egypt, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. She'll be traveling through mid-December. This is her fourth trip to the Middle East and North Africa since she came to office in May of 2022. Her last trip to Israel was in December of 2023. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has announced he's selected Adam Boehler to be the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs. Adam Boehler worked for Trump as the lead negotiator on the Abraham Accord team during his first presidency. He negotiated, according to Trump, with some of the, quote, toughest people in the world. He, according to former President Trump, negotiated with the Taliban. He said, this is Trump speaking, it's a direct quote, that no one is tougher in the United States of America. Adam will work tirelessly to bring the great American citizens home. So Adam Boehler's role specifically is to be the special envoy for hostage affairs. He was a senior aide with Jared Kushner. He helped craft the Abrahamic Accords previously. So when the UAE normalized with Israel, etc., Adam Boehler played a very significant role. You'll recall that this week, President Trump said there will be hell to pay if the hostages held in Gaza are not released prior to his inauguration on January 20th. A lot of people have been asking, is that making any difference? I mean, honestly, dozens of people are still dying in Gaza every day. January 20th is a long way off in that regard. A lot is riding on these conversations in Egypt, this week and in coming days. Trump's incoming Middle East advisor says that the Gaza war is, quote, practically over, end quote. He says that the president doesn't want to link hostages and their release to the day after. There's a Middle East advisor whose name is Massad Balouse. He's not been announced much in the news. He's going to be an advisor to the Trump administration. He was interviewed in European media, and he said the war is practically over. There's virtually no significant military activity. Now, that's true. There's not clashes, but there's still killing. There's still literally, the death toll continues to go up every single day. He says the only issue that remains is the hostages, and that Trump believes there should be no delay in their release. Okay. I can appreciate that. We're calling for the release of the hostages as well. On Israel's violations of the Lebanese ceasefire, Balouse said that they're in a 60-day test period. The text of the agreement itself spells out the right of each party. Okay. Regarding the prospects of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, the Middle East advisor said a roadmap that would lead to a Palestinian state is an important part of discussions between the USA and Saudi Arabia. So it sounds like the Trump administration, again, is leaving the Palestinians out of the conversations about the Palestinians' future. Saudi Arabia is not demanding the creation of a Palestinian state today, according to the Middle East Advisor. Finally, earlier this week in Israel, hundreds attended the funeral of Asaf Dagan. He was an Israeli Defense Forces combat pilot who died by suicide. And there was a great debate in Israel because the Israeli military was not going to allow him to be buried according to a military funeral. He was one of many lives that have been taken by his own hand as a result of this current catastrophe. Between October of 2023 and May 2024, we know of at least 10 Israeli soldiers who've died by suicide. According to Haaretz, it's very, very difficult to know. Israel will not release the statistics of suicides in the military. On Sunday, Israel's High Court of Justice ruled that he could receive a military funeral in a civilian cemetery after the army had initially refused to recognize him as a fallen soldier. The article in Haaretz summarizes the crisis of suicides, the crisis of mental health challenges, post-traumatic stress disorder that the Israeli military experiences. They call it a hidden darkness, the trauma that these soldiers, these young men and women face. The article says conversations with relatives and professionals suggest that they saw massacres and sites that destroyed their very souls. And my heart's cry, when is this world going to realize and bring an end to all of these atrocities? When will we understand that death and violence and killing, that murder and oppression is not only killing Palestinians each and every day, but it's killing Israelis as well? So may we continue to work in our efforts towards peace. May God go before us. In the name of Christ. Amen.